We're continuing our deep dive into the grants and schemes that can help first home buyers get into the market sooner or reduce their upfront costs. And today we're looking at what's available right now in Queensland, including stamp duty savings, the first homeowner grant, and the new shared equity scheme launching later this year. Now I'll walk you through who's eligible, how they work, and some of the key things to think about before using the incentives, because strategy still matters. Hello, and welcome to First Home Unlocked, the podcast for unlocking clarity and confidence for first home buyers. I'm Jack Elliott, National First Home Buyer Specialist at Alcove.
And I'm Chris Bates, ex-financial planner and mortgage broker.
Together, we are on a mission to empower you with the keys to unlock your first home. Let's jump in. Welcome back to First Home Unlocked, and today it's just me while Chris is away in Europe for a solo episode. So we're continuing our deep dive into the grants and schemes that can help first home buyers get into the market sooner or reduce their upfront costs. And today we're looking at what's available right now, recording this in September 2025 in Queensland, including stamp duty savings, the first homeowner grant, and the new shared equity scheme launching later this year. Now, I'll walk you through who's eligible, how they work, and some of the key things to think about before using the incentives, because strategy still matters. So let's dive in. First, let's break down what's available to help you save on the upfront costs when purchasing your first home. So starting with stamp duty concessions for Queensland first home buyers. There are three main categories, but they do have shared eligibility. To claim any of these first home buying concessions, you must be 18 years or older, never owned a property in Australia or overseas, move within 12 months of settlement or 2 years for land purchases, and then live there for at least 12 months. So it can't be used as an investment property for at least the first year. You cannot lease or rent before moving in, and be buying at market value, so you can't purchase a home cheaper from a family member. So you don't need to be Australian citizen or a permanent resident, but for foreign buyers, there may be an additional stamp duty charge that's added on. Now, if you are buying with someone else who isn't a first home buyer, you can still claim a first home buyer concession on your share, even if the other person doesn't qualify. So the final stamp duty is worked out by combining the different concessions each person is eligible for. And you can use the transfer duty calculator, which we'll link in the show notes, to estimate what you'll pay. So let's get into the three that are available. First up, we have the first home concession, which is for existing homes. So this applies when you are buying that established property, like I mentioned, as your first home. Now, the key price ranges are a full exemption if the property is valued at $700,000 or less, and a partial concession applies between $700,000 and $800,000 on a sliding scale. So this can save you up to $24,525 compared to the standard stamp duty rates. So it's important not to base your home buying decision on chasing exemptions or grants. Some buyers might hear about these concessions and limit their search to under the $700K to get the full exemption. But just remember, if it's possible for you to expand your search above $700,000 to find a better quality property in a better location with stronger long-term growth potential, paying a bit more upfront in stamp duty is probably worth it. And remember that stamp duty is a sliding scale based on the purchase price, and the concessional rate between $700,000 and $800,000 still provides big savings for first home buyers. So let's break down some examples. So if you buy for $700K, you pay no stamp duty because you've already got that full exemption. Now, if you buy at $720,000, for example, you would pay around $4,000 in stamp duty as a first home buyer, compared to around $18K in stamp duty for owner occupiers who aren't first home buyers, and $25,000 for investors. Now, at $750,000, if you were to purchase for that amount, you would pay around $11,000 in stamp duty as a first home buyer, which is usually around $20,000 for owner occupiers who aren't first home buyers, or around $27,000 for investors. So depending on your capacity, that extra $11K in stamp duty might be worth it to get a better quality asset. But it's important to know that there is still stamp duty support for purchases above $800,000 in Queensland if you're buying to live in your home under the home concession. So it applies to anyone buying a home to live in, not just first home buyers, as long as you move in within 12 months from the purchase and live in the property for at least a year. So the home concession gives you a discounted stamp duty rate on the first $350,000 of the property value, saving you up to $7,175 compared to standard duty rates. So for example, if you buy at $800,000, you won't be eligible for the first home concession, but you'd pay around $22,000 under the home concession versus $29,000 for investors when there's no stamp duty support that is applied. Now, if you buy, for example, at $850,000, you pay around $24,000 under the home concession versus $32,000 for investors where no stamp duty support is applied. So you can see the differences there. You can still get that support over $800,000. The second category is the first home concession for new homes. So if you're buying a brand new or substantially renovated home, you may be eligible for a full stamp duty exemption, regardless of the purchase price. So to qualify, you must move in within 12 months and live there consistently for at least 12 months. You must buy a home that is either brand new and never lived in or substantially renovated, meaning the renovations have created a brand new home that's never been occupied since the work was completed. So this can look attractive, especially if you're considering a house or land package or off the plan, but just because it's new doesn't mean that it's better. We dive into this in more detail in episode 6, Unlocking Asset Quality. But in short, established homes often have better land value and more scarcity, which can lead to better long-term growth. And many new builds, especially new development estates, don't have that scarcity factor, which drives growth. And if the same house is built 100 times in the same suburb, it can limit that future growth value. Now, these incentives are designed to stimulate construction, not necessarily to help you buy the best property. So if the numbers work and the home is high quality, it can be worth exploring. But don't let stamp duty savings be your only consideration when looking at your first home. Now, the third category is the first home vacant land concession available. So if you're buying vacant land to build your first home, you can get a full exemption of stamp duty with no price cap. As long as you build one home on that piece of land, you don't lease, sell, or transfer before living there, and you're buying land that is vacant and doesn't have any existing building on it, and you move in within 2 years of settlement, and once you've moved in, you need to live in the property for a minimum of that 12 months. So stamp duty may apply on any non-residential portion of the land, for example, farmland or mixed-use zoning. So if your plans change or you don't move in, you may lose the concession and have to repay the duty plus the interest and penalty. So that's one to watch out for. Just to recap the main things when considering weighing up the stamp duty benefits in Queensland, the 3 that we've covered. Don't just buy for the concession. Base your decisions on your long-term strategy and the quality of the asset that you're purchasing. A better quality property may cost you $20,000 to $30,000 more in duty, but it can build you more equity over time. Now, let's move on to the next incentive available for first home buyers in Queensland, which is the First Homeowners Grant. Now, if you're building or buying a brand new home under $750,000, this grant can help you get into the market with a smaller deposit. So it's a $30,000 tax-free grant to support first home buyers who are building or buying a brand new home, including house and land packages, off-the-plan apartments or townhouses, substantially renovated homes, and new detached dwellings on relatives' land, for example, a granny flat. So this is not available for established homes. So to qualify for the $30,000 first homeowners grant, you must be buying or building a new home valued under $750,000, including land and any contract variations. Sign the contract before the 30th of June 2026, because the government usually commit these grants for only one financial year at a time. You must be 18 or older and an Australian citizen or permanent resident or buying with one. You must move into the new home within the first year of buying or live in the home consistently for at least 6 months. And you must not have received a first homeowners grant in any other state or territory and not have owned a residential property in Australia before. Now, some extra things to consider with this grant is that it is separate from the Queensland stamp duty concession, so you can qualify for both if eligible. Now, this grant can be used as well as the First Home Guarantee Scheme, which we'll cover in a moment. Now, again, it can be tempting to chase this $30,000 grant by choosing a cheaper new build or an off-the-plan apartment, but don't let the grant dictate your decision. it's worth asking yourself, is this the best long-term property for me? Is it in a location likely to grow in value? Is the quality of construction high? Is there an oversupply of similar homes in the area? So new doesn't always mean better. As we explained in episode 6 of the podcast, the best long-term decision is one that prioritizes asset quality, lifestyle fit, and that scarcity for future growth. It's not just about the upfront savings. Now, like I mentioned before, we're going to jump into the first home guarantee scheme. So this is an Australian government scheme under Housing Australia that allows first home buyers to purchase a home with as little as 5% deposit without paying lender's mortgage insurance. You maintain full ownership of the property. Now, the government basically tells the bank to treat you as if you had a 20% deposit, which is why the banks won't charge you LMI, and you still maintain access to them competitive rates. Now, we break down the first home guarantee scheme in full in episode 10 of the podcast, where we include the eligibility, how it all works, what guarantee actually means, the pros and cons, and how to remove the guarantee in future. Now, I recommend jumping in and giving that one a listen because this is a great option for many first home buyers. Now, to use the first home guarantee scheme, the property must fall within certain price caps based on the location. So for Queensland, these are in the capital city and regional centres, you can currently purchase up to $700,000. But from October 1st, 2025, the government have announced that they will increase this price cap to $1 million. So that's for Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Now, for the rest of the state, you can currently purchase up to $500,000. But from October 1st, 2025, that's increasing to $700,000. There is also currently an income cap of $125,000 for singles and $200,000 for couples. But again, this will be removed come October 1st, 2025, allowing more access for first home buyers. Now, these price caps can limit your options, especially in popular areas. So while the 5% deposit and waived LMI are really great, again, make sure that the properties you are looking at are still high quality assets that suit your long-term goals. But this is a really great scheme to use for first home buyers. Now, there is one more support option I want to touch on before we wrap up. So Queensland Boost to Buy scheme, which is a brand new shared equity scheme announced in the 2025-26 Queensland budget, with expressions of interest currently being open. Now, this is designed to help more Queenslanders bridge the deposit gap and get into the market sooner with less deposit and lower repayments. But it comes with a major trade-off, which is shared ownership with the government. Under this scheme, the government co-purchases the home with you and holds a share of ownership. The key features and eligibility for this scheme are that the government will contribute up to 30% for new homes and 25% for established homes. The deposit required is a minimum of 2%. For example, that's $15,000 on a $750,000 home. And the maximum property price when using this scheme is up to $1 million. And there are some income caps. So that's $150,000 for singles and $225,000 combined for couples. Now, the ownership requirements are that you must live in the home as your primary residence, and other eligibility requirements will apply for the scheme once it opens for applications. So applications for this are expected to be open later in 2025. Now, what makes it different? Well, unlike the other schemes like the first home guarantee scheme that I just mentioned, where you maintain full ownership of the property, the Boost to Buy means that the government owns a percentage of your home. You don't pay interest or repayments on their share, but you'll need to buy it back if you want full ownership of that property in the future. So we don't usually recommend using a shared equity scheme as your first option because shared ownership means shared control, and long term, this can limit your ability to leverage equity because the government keeps their share plus any growth, and it can also make future refinancing harder. And there are rules you have to live with. However, Queensland government haven't released the specifics yet. So if you're considering this scheme, listen to episode 11 of the podcast for a full breakdown of shared equity schemes across Australia, including the trade-offs, the long-term implications, ongoing rules, and who it might suit in certain situations. Now, shared equity schemes, again, can sound attractive, but they're not always in your long-term best interest. So always focus on that asset quality and consider your long-term goals and your exit plan when thinking about this scheme. And I would encourage anyone thinking about this to speak with us first to see if there's an alternative option available where you can maintain full ownership of your property. So that's a snapshot of what's available right now for first home buyers in Queensland. So you've got the stamp duty exemptions and concessions, a $30,000 grant for new homes, the first home guarantee scheme with increasing access and price caps come October 1st, 2025, and a shared equity scheme that's launching soon. But as always, it's not just about what you can access, it's about what's right for you. Your lifestyle goals, preferred location, and long-term vision and strategy all play a role. So incentives can help you enter the market sooner, but they're most powerful when used as part of that bigger plan, not just the plan itself. So you'll find all the links to the relevant government websites to everything we've mentioned in this episode in the show notes. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you're ready to map out your strategy that fits your life and goals, you can book a get to know you chat with me at firsthomeunlocked.com.au/book. And don't forget to follow the podcast for upcoming state episodes. We've got the rest of Australia still to come and more first home buyer information in future episodes. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much for listening. We'd really appreciate if you could do us a huge favour. Share this episode with any first home buyers that you know so we can help more people like you feel clear, calm and confident when purchasing their first property. You can join our Facebook group, First Home Unlocked, to continue the conversation with other first home buyers. Or if you're ready to unlock your first home, you can book a get to know you chat by using the link in the show notes or by going to firsthomeunlocked.com.au. Before we go, just a reminder that everything we share on this podcast is general in nature and not tailored to your personal situation. We always recommend seeking advice from a qualified and experienced professional when making financial decisions.